If you're paying full price for real estate deals, you're not investing. You're actually donating thousands of dollars you didn't actually need to lose. In this video, I'm breaking down 5 proven negotiation strategies that help you buy properties for less, create instant equity, and win deals even in competitive markets. And at the end, I'll show you the one negotiation mistake I see beginners make that silently kills great deals before they even start. So just imagine what it would change for you if every property you had bought already had the profit built in the day you close. Let's turn that into reality. All right, so way number 1 is based on the numbers, not emotion. I can't tell you how hard it is to actually do this because we all get kind of emotional sometimes about these properties. We get really excited and we start trying to kind of make things work when it really doesn't. You've always got to be sure that you are looking at the numbers. The numbers are what determine whether or not it's a deal. And when you use these calculators and stuff that I talk about on the channel, it's going to give you a guide so where you know what your maximum allowable offer is. And you have to make sure that you stay within those parameters. Too often we get excited and we start, like I said, we try to make things sort of fit in that really aren't, and we try to like squeeze the numbers. And at the end of the day, when you do this, more times than not, it's going to come back to bite you. You're going to have thinner margins. And then if something ends up coming up, if it's a repair, something comes up in the deal that you're not expecting, it could completely wipe out any type of profit that you're expecting. Or if it's a rental property that you're going to keep and you're not expecting something and it pops up right after you buy it, it can be a big problem. One of the first properties I ever bought, I actually bought it and I repaired almost everything except the HVAC system. It was an older HVAC system, but it was working at the time when I bought it. And of course, I didn't factor that in. I really wanted to make the deal work, and I didn't factor that in when I made my offer. And what do you think happened? I bought the property. I ended up putting a tenant in there, and we took a trip to Walt Disney World. I'll never forget this. And we get down there, and literally the first day, the tenant's calling because the HVAC system went out. HVAC system went out, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" And I had to replace it, and that was a huge expense that I did not anticipate, unfortunately. All right, way number 2 is use repairs as a negotiation tool. So oftentimes we definitely think about the fact of, having to do all these repairs is a bad thing, and it can be. And if you don't factor those things in, it can really cost you a lot of money. But when you're in a negotiation, you should use repairs as your friend, because oftentimes a seller has no idea what the repairs are going to cost. Usually their thought, if they even factor it in at all. So first of all, a lot of times sellers don't even factor in repairs. But if they are factoring in repairs, they think something might cost a few $1,000s when it's going to end up costing $10,000 or $12,000. And so they really don't understand that. And so part of what you have to do when you're negotiating is you need to at least educate them so they understand what kind of money you're going to have to spend regarding repairs. And it kind of just brings them into reality. Like a lot of times if something is really dated or old and it still works, like the HVAC system I mentioned a minute ago, if it's something that functions but it's at the very end of its life, you need to factor that in. And they need to understand that, hey, I can't fix this house up and sell it with a 17-year-old HVAC system. I have to replace that, and that's going to cost me a lot of money. And so if you educate them on that stuff, usually they might not agree with you, but it does bring them kind of back to reality. Like, okay, I kind of understand where this is coming from, versus it just being some crazy unexplainable reason why you're offering such a low offer. And don't be afraid to also, when you're doing that, to really anchor with those, using those to really anchor your offer so that you've got some flexibility to continue to bring that offer up if you need to negotiate. Hey, quick pause. If you want a simple step-by-step breakdown of how investors actually buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat, I've put together a free BRRRR Mastery Guide. It's a shortcut that complements exactly what we're talking about in this video. You can grab it free using the link I'll put in the description below. All right, now let's keep going. Way number 3 is a good one. This is actually negotiating the terms, not just the price. So often we get kind of tunnel vision as investors, thinking like everyone is only worried about the price. And surprisingly enough, although price is very important and it is a major motivating factor for most people, there are things that are maybe even more important than price. So here's some things that can come into play. Number one is if you have someone, I've run into deals before where a person needs to sell because they need to have money to buy their next house, but they're not able to close on that house for a certain period of time, and they don't want to like risk it by trying to close and strategically time it. And so you can do something like a rent back, where you actually sell them the house. The proceeds can be held by the attorney in escrow for the rent, and that way you're guaranteed that you'll get the rent money. And then they have somewhere to stay, but they get all of their proceeds from the sale that they can then use to put towards their other house when they close on it. So that's just an example. There are tons of other things, though. It could be the timetable, how fast you're going to close on the property. If they need something quickly, you can use that and have some flexibility to get the price that you need. Or a lot of times when we do owner financing, whether we're the seller or the buyer, that's going to have an impact on that price. I have a property right now we're actually closing on this Friday, and I am literally buying this property and I'm showing up to closing to sign documents, and I'm not showing up with any money out of pocket. No closing, no transfer or property taxes, no down payment, nothing. I'm literally showing up, and on the HUD it literally says zero for buyer's amount of money to bring to the table. And the reason we're doing that is because I'm taking this property over subject to it needs a lot of work, and the seller just wants out of it. He does not want to have to continue to make those payments. He's a little bit upside down. We're paying a little bit more than we should for the property, which I understand that. But I'm stepping in and making those mortgage payments for him. So I'm going to be able to turn around and probably rent this property out and have a really nice spread, or we'll be able to hold it for a little bit and then sell it and make a nice profit in the future. So that's an example of how terms can sometimes, you can get them the price that they need, but you're going to be able to get the terms in favor that you need, like in my case, showing up to closing without having to come out of pocket at all. The number 4 way you negotiate is you have to be willing to walk away. This is so important. I remember I was on a trip, my wife and I, we were in Cozumel, Mexico, and I wanted a new pair of cowboy boots. And these boots, I found a pair in a little shop, and I fell in love with them. And of course, Catherine was like, you should totally buy them. I said, yeah. And so I went up and I negotiated with the guy, and he wouldn't come down on the price. And so I said, okay, no problem. Thank you for your time. And I put the boots back. And my wife, Catherine, was like, what are you doing? You love the boots. You got the money. Like, why don't you buy them? And I was like, because I'm going to walk away, and he's going to sell me these boots for the price that I want them. And so sure enough, I was walking out of the shop. The guy literally comes out of the shop and says, come back, come back. We went back in there, and I bought the boots for the price that I wanted them. The reason being is because he knew that I was willing to walk away. And that gave me really the leverage in the negotiation. And so whenever we're talking about real estate, you have to be willing to truly walk away. I would have walked away. I would have bought the boots had that not worked out with the price that I wanted. You have to be willing to do the same. You got to be willing to say, hey, the numbers don't make sense. I'm going to walk away. And oftentimes what that will do is that will actually bring the seller back to the table. So they may be firm and digging their heels in, and you're like, okay, this doesn't work. Hey, thank you for your time or whatever. And they're like, whoa. Like, let's try to make this deal work. And it brings them back to the seller. And that's where you can really start negotiating other things, as I mentioned, like terms or leveraging different terms for price reductions or those sort of things. And way number 5 to be an expert negotiator in real estate is you have to be willing to be silent. See, that was kind of uncomfortable when I was just silent like that. Like, you have to be willing to be silent. When you make your offer and you give them the number, you need to be quiet and stop talking. And oftentimes that is very difficult for a new investor because they feel like they need to fill the dead space with some conversation because it's just an awkward silence. But what it also does is it puts that awkward silence onto the seller. And so normally when you make that offer and you say that number that you're gonna offer, there's this kind of feeling like you should really go to try to justify that number. But if you've done it right, you've already explained and educated them the repairs and everything. So you've already kind of built in their mind, hey, there's all these things that this person's going to have to do to get this property where it needs to be. So you've already kind of overcome that objective already. But when you give them the offer, you stop, you don't say anything. And there's like an old saying, like, whoever speaks first loses. You just want to be quiet. And Oftentimes this could end up being anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds of just silence, but you just sit there and you look. And they're going to speak first, and that's going to really put you psychologically in a better position in the negotiation because, number one, they may just be thinking and processing, and they may think, okay, this works, and then you open your mouth and you start talking and trying to backpedal and explain it when they were actually going to accept the offer. Or maybe they want to negotiate and they're trying to think about it, but you're confident, you're standing there, you've made your offer, you're sitting at the table, and now you're quiet, and you're sitting there confidently because you're like, this is a good offer. And they're going to speak and maybe say, well, that doesn't work and here's why, and maybe give you more information that you need in order to better negotiate. All right, so here's that mistake that I promised you at the start of the video that I see so many new investors make. And it kind of ties into number one, which is making the offer on the numbers, not on emotions. It is that so many of us, myself included, I've done this before, you fall in love with the property before you buy the property, and that really affects you emotionally when you're negotiating. You love the property, you've already envisioned all of the things that you're going to do and how awesome it's going to be, and you're going to make this huge amount of money if you're flipping the property, or it's going to bring in this much cash flow with you if you rent the property. So you're already, like, in your head, you're just in love with the property. And by doing that, that causes you to have a lot of emotions tied into that. You're not really willing to walk away because you love the property so much. You're not really looking at numbers. You're being more emotional, and that can get you into trouble. And everybody, I think, if they're honest in this business, has probably done that at some point. I know I certainly have had situations where I've just really been excited. Even that deal I was talking about earlier. I mean, I really truly knew better that I should have factored in replacing that HVAC system, but I didn't because I didn't want to blow the deal. I wanted to get the deal under contract and move forward. And funny enough, as soon as that person moved in, the HVAC system goes out and I have to spend all this money that I wasn't expecting. And so you gotta be able to, when you have a property, not fall in love with the property before you negotiate with them, and really use your numbers to understand whether or not it's a good deal. You got to do those things that we talked about. You got to use the math, all right? Use the numbers. You've got to make sure that you're going to actually use those repairs as a leverage or as a bargaining tool, because that can come in to help you. You've got to be also looking at the terms and not just the price. There's a saying that, like, I'll give you your price if you give me my terms. You can literally buy any piece of real estate almost for any price if you get the right terms. A property could be worth $200,000 and you want $400,000, and I say, okay, I'll pay you the $400,000. I'm going to give you $1 down and $1 a month for the next, bazillion years. So you've got to be willing to look at the terms, not just the price. You've got to be willing to walk away. That is something that a seller can sense, that if you're not willing to walk away and you're just absolutely, desperate to get the deal and make it work. And the fifth thing is using that silence to your advantage. Now, if you're serious about getting started, I also have a free 2.5-hour real estate investing course that walks you through everything you need to know step by step. Now, this is completely free, and I'll also put that link in the description below as well. If you're ready to stop guessing and you're ready to start investing with confidence, that's your next move. As always, thanks for watching today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.